Welcome back to lesson number 10 here in the color page inside of DaVinci Resolve. Today, we are going to talk about delivering projects. This is our last lesson of this course, lesson number 10, in which we will be discussing a few different things that you have to do after you have completed your project and color graded it. So the topics of today are going to be the Lightbox feature inside of the color page. We are going to talk and understand the render workflows and presets available here in the deliver page. Then we are going to create custom renders and saving presets. Then we are going to configure a timeline for digital cinema projection, or a DCP, okay? And then finally, we are going to explore some advanced render settings inside of the deliver page. Okay, so these are the topics that we are going to cover today, and we're going to start with our Lightbox. Okay, so now you can see that over here we have our long workday commercial, okay, project that we've been working on, all right, and we have obviously all of the clips that we've been working on so far, okay, from the previous lessons. So now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go here into our color page, all right, where we are very familiar with by now. Okay, and you can see that these are all the different clips that we have available to us. So the first thing we're going to do over here is, first of all, I am going to choose the playback over here. And on render cache, you can see that now is on none. And we are going to check this smart option, okay, which will now, okay, auto render cache some of the clips inside of our timeline here in the color page. Perfect. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is also to go back into my project settings, and here in the master settings, we're going to scroll down to our optimized media and render cache, if you remember that. And here on the render cache format, we are going to make sure that we have the highest possible quality. So in this case, you can see that we have a DNX HR444. So now I'm on a Mac, so probably the best option would be the ProRes 4444 HDR, okay? Something like that. And then I'm going to click save, and that saves our preferred codec. Perfect. Here in the color page, as you can see, all right, we are going to go up here, and I am going to choose here lesson 10 timeline, all right, which is with all the adjustments that we did in the previous lessons, if you remember. Okay, so all of those adjustments are now reflected right over here. Now, where is the Lightbox? Let's talk about the Lightbox and how does it work. The Lightbox is very easy. You can see it's here on top. And now by clicking that, you can see that now we have activated our Lightbox. Now, what does it do? What does it mean? And what are all those things that we see in here? Okay, it's very easy, because what we're seeing here is basically what we are seeing also in the color page over here. Now, the difference is that this is a little bit streamlined in a way, okay, where you're basically fitting so many different things into your viewer here. Now, in the Lightbox, it's a little bit different in the sense that now our focus is mainly on the clips. Now, this is also optimal for colorists that want that sort of macro view of all the clips that you have. Okay, so to have an idea, how are things looking? It's everything the way I envisioned it. So this is a good way. It's almost like a bird's eye view of your timeline, okay, which is really great. And then you can also come here and really adjust things out. So say you have a huge, okay, a timeline, or you're working on a big feature film, so now you make it this small and you have hundreds of clips, okay, all over here. So now in this case, we're going to keep it at this size, okay, something like that. Looks great. Perfect. So now you can see that we also have a few other features over here. And we have one over here, which is the clip filter, and we also have the information. Now, by checking on this information button, you can see that now we have information about each of the clips. As you can see here, we have clip numbers, time codes, video track numbers, codecs, source names, and version information, okay? So all of that will be available to us. So, and this is really great, because now what can also do is to come up over here as well, where we have this clip filter, you can see, and now we have a bunch of options that you can see. Yeah, a lot of options that we can select from. So basically, this is really great, because now we're using the Lightbox in conjunction our filtering options, and we can really start to filter things up. So now, for instance, right, we say we want to select our ungraded clips, which we can easily do here. If you remember in our clips, you can go and then choose, right, our ungraded clips. However, in the Lightbox, it's basically the same operation. It's very easy because you have everything, okay, listed for you over here, and then you can just choose your ungraded clips, okay? And as you can see, that now shows us all the 5 ungraded clips that we have here. These 2 clips, okay, that belong to the garage group, as you remember, that this of the man driving here, one of the outdoor exterior, and one is just a blank matte white clip, just like that. So now the first thing we're going to do over here, all right, we are going to select the first two clips and these two, and we are going to right click here, and then on groups, all right, we can then assign these groups to our garage. So we can choose our garage and we can say assign to group. And now you can see that by this, we have this information down here telling us that now these are indeed now assigned to that group. Now, if you remember, we did most of the look recreation in the post clip group level. Okay, so that means that now effects or that look adjustment has been added to both of these clips. Okay, so now we're going to leave these alone. These are added now to that group. Now, the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to select clip number 3, as you can see. Okay, so obviously this clip is not graded, so we can start also to make some adjustments to this clip as well. So now what you can do is now to activate over here, you can see that we have this option, which is the color controls. Okay, and now that opens up all the controls for you. Okay, which is very, very nifty, because now we're working in this Lightbox, okay, feature over here. We're working in the Lightbox window, and we have everything available to us right here, which is also very useful. Okay, so now the first thing we're going to do with the clip that we want to change, we are going now to make a few adjustments. We're going to start with the offset, and we are going to increase that, all right, to brighten up our image to something like 35. Okay, that should be pretty good for us. Okay, something like that works. All right, and we can look at it before and after. Now we can go here to my clip, and also now I can only see my selected clip over here, and then lower this to -1. Okay, so we can see all the different adjustments that we have made to this clip. Okay, very nice. And just like that. Now what we can do is once again go to the ungraded clips. All right, so now this is just a white matte, which in this case we don't need. I can also go to selected clips, and we also had this other clip over here, okay, which we were looking at earlier. And if you do remember, this is in this very warm, okay, group of these exterior shots that we are working on, and we definitely want to adjust that as well. So what we're going to do on this one, we are going to take the temperature and slightly add it and make it a little bit warmer, not too much, not go overboard, but something like that. Okay, should work. And you can see this is the before and this is the after. Okay, by warming up this clip, now this fits better with all the different sequences in that exterior, okay, where this man walks towards the balcony. So that looks pretty good. And now we can see that obviously we had our white matte last, but that it's not that we need it. Okay, and you can see that then we can leave it like that. Okay, so now I can go back to all of our clips, and you can see that we can go back to every single clip that we have available to us. Perfect. Now, the next thing we're going to do over here is we are going to go onto our noise reduction clips. As you can see, we have 2 clips over here. Now, something very important to remember here is that when you're working with your noise reduction, okay, just like as we discussed earlier in previous lessons, is that you might want to deactivate or disable that noise reduction node because it's very processing intensive. Okay, so for the sake of playing things in real time, real playback, you're deactivating or disabling the node just so things can run smoothly, and then the moment, okay, you're ready to deliver, then you want to make sure to go back and activate. So that is exactly what we're going to do. That's why we filter things by noise reduction. I can close the Lightbox, by the way, okay? And I could technically do the same here in the clips. Remember that things are connected. I can go back to this noise reduction, all right? So now we're looking at our clips, and we can in fact see that our denoise is not active over here. So what we're going to do now is to activate that. So I'm going to press Command D, all right? And you can see that now things are caching once again because we now went back, okay, and activated that node, and we're going to do the same here for our denoise. Remember this, we also did that for the track, okay, where we did do a tracking when we added our backplate and our crop for this clip as well. So we are also going to activate that as well. By the way, I'm pressing the shortcut here, but by clicking the number here, it's basically the same operation. Okay, so you're doing basically the same thing. And as a final step now, what we're going to do is once we make sure that all the clips, okay, are being cached properly, you can go back here to clips and go into your all clips, okay? And you can see that now this is blue, turn blue. Once again, if you're working with a lot with Lightbox and the clips over here, you can do the same here, okay? Everything is connected. You can go on all clips there or here, whatever it's easier for you. So once you've made sure that all your clips that was ungraded, so any ungraded clips, all right, in your Lightbox is perfect, okay? You go through them, then when you make sure of that, you go back to your noise reduction, make sure that to activate, if you disabled any nodes, tracking or anything like that, make sure to do all of that before you're ready now to jump into the deliver page. So I'm going to click here now on the render page, and you can see that now we have something looking like this, okay? That is mainly 4 different sections here. We have our render settings here on the left. We have our viewer here in the middle. Then we have our render queue over here. And down here we have both our timeline showing in this case over here with all these clips and also the thumbnail timeline as well. All right. So now the first thing to understand here is that there is really 4 steps in terms of exporting a video from DaVinci Resolve. And the first one is obviously here in the render settings, okay, panel, which you can set up your video output format, which includes obviously the file type, codec, and also the audio format, as you can see over here. And then the name and location on your workstation, and then all the different advanced settings, as you can see down here. Then the next thing you're going to do is define the range you want to export. Over here, you can see that we have the render, entire timeline, and in and out range, okay? Then you're going to click add to render queue. And finally, you are going to do a render all operations in which you are going to render, if you had 3, 4, 5, 7 renders, okay, you can render all of them or select the ones that you want to render first. Perfect. So now with that done, we are going now over here, we are going to make a few selections. Okay, so we're going to look at all of our settings over here. Now you can see that with this, I can drag and scroll around and show you all the different options that we have available to us. Now, obviously the custom export, this opens the full range of render settings in the panel over here, as you can see. Okay, then over here, if we keep scrolling, you can see that we have the ProRes H.264 and H.265 masters, okay, over here, which basically these produce the common video files, okay, that you can use for many different uses, from high-end exports to broadcast, this case ProRes, okay, and then compressed HD, UHD files for client or just regular playback through your H.264 and H.265. Now, something very important to understand is that the ProRes feature in the master preset, the ProRes master preset, this is available only on Mac OS systems. So if you do have a Windows, it is not going to work for you. Okay, so that is something to be aware. Now, with that said, now we can move on, and you can see that we have other features as well. You have your YouTube, as you can see over here. You have your Vimeo and Twitter. These are specifically optimized for all of these social media platforms. So you can see YouTube, Vimeo, and Twitter. And now another cool feature about this is that you can also log in to whether it's your YouTube, Vimeo, or Twitter, and then you can directly upload to that, so which is also very, very useful. As you can see, if you scroll down here, I have logged in some of them. So I can see you have the Vimeo settings, then I also have the Dropbox settings, okay, over here. So that is something that you can also do, okay? So they're all up here, and they're very useful if you're the type of person that uploads a lot on these platforms as well, okay? So now going on, you also have TikTok, as you can see, okay? Then you also do have a Dropbox and a replay over here, okay? So now these are optimized obviously for Dropbox in case you use that. A lot of people do. So, right, so that's the file hosting services, as you might know. And you also have the replay over here, which also it's great if you want to see collaborators, comments, and annotations inside of Resolve, which is also very useful. Then you also have over here the IMF, okay? These basically features a set of SMPTE and ST2067 compliant resolutions and codecs, okay? For tapeless and deliverable networks, okay? So this is in DaVinci Resolve. It's great because this doesn't require any license, okay? And does support, right, multiple formats such as video, audio, and subtitles, okay? Now this, in case you don't know what this is, it's basically used for broadcast distribution and online streaming services, all right? Things such as Netflix, Disney Plus, okay? So all of them. Great. So now the next thing that we have over here, if we keep scrolling, you can see that we have then Final Cut, we have Premiere, as you can see, and then Avid. So now this is perfect, all right, for NLE software. So this assumes that you have a workflow in which you're editing on a different NLE. So say you're using Premiere, which is very common, and then you migrate to Resolve for grading or VFX, which you should do, and then you return and send it back then, say to Premiere or Final Cut for send it back there for delivery. Okay, so that is what these are for those presets: Final Cut Pro 7, Premiere XML, Avid, okay, AAF, as you can see there. And you can also, another way to round trip color grades is also to use a CDL, which is the color decision list. Okay, then scrolling, going through, we also have here the audio only. Pretty self-explanatory. This disables the video output, okay, and delivers just a single audio file. And then you can go in and be more specific, okay, specify the audio file format in the render settings down here. And finally, you have Pro Tools, which is a very, very common preset also used, okay. The Pro Tools one obviously renders 3 files. You have the reference video, okay, then you have the individual export with all the audio clips and their channels, and then the AAF files that you can open in Pro Tools as well, okay. So now this is obviously a workflow in which you would send your audio mix, okay, to an engineer working in Pro Tools, okay, which is, as I said, also very, very common. All right, so now we are going to move on to and select our preset, which in this case is going to be the YouTube. Okay, this one over here, as you can see. And here on the preset, we're going to choose 2160 actually. Okay, and now once we do that, you can see that we have all of these options, okay, down here, as you can see. So the one that we're going to start, obviously you have here the file name. So we can call this the workday. Okay, this is going to be our workday. Then we're going to type here YouTube, just like that, 1.1. Okay, so you give it a name just like that. Okay, and once you do the name, obviously you have to add a location. Pretty self-explanatory. I don't think that's something that I should show you, because I believe everybody knows this is, you just click your browse and decide where you want to send it. Okay, in this case here, I put it in this folder over here, and then finally you can see that you have all the other different options in case you want to change resolution, frame rates, and make any adjustments of the sort. Okay, you can do that as well. Okay, very, very easy. So now once that is done, the next step, as we discussed earlier, it's you're going to choose here the render, right? Either if you want to render the entire timeline or in and out ranges, which is something that also can be very useful in case you don't want to render the entire timeline and you have an in and out point. So you're very specific with what you want from the clip. So you can select that. So in this case, we're going to keep it to entire timeline over here. Okay. And what we're going to do next, once we have done all of that, we're going to say here, add to render queue. Okay, now this is going to say add high resolution renders. Okay, so this is asking you that where we're exporting now, it's a higher resolution, right, compared to what our timeline project was. Okay, so that is, so in this case, we're going to say here add. However, okay, so that's something to talk about, is that if you're rendering out a video project that is a high resolution, right, than the original footage, it's best to first upscale the timeline in the project settings. Okay, now with that done now, all right, the next thing we can do here is in the render queue panel, we can also give it a name and rename things up. Over here, you can see now it says job 1, but you can also rename it to whatever you want. So in this case, we can say this is our YouTube, okay, to something like that. All right, you can give it this name, just like that. And with that done now, you can see that all you have to do now is say here, render all, and you can start to render your file. Okay, now if you had multiple ones, you can also select them individually. For say you had 3 or 4, you can select all of them if you wanted to, or just 2 of them, and then just add render all. Now that we've looked at all the different presets that we have available here, the question is now, how do we create our custom renders and how do we save that as a preset so we can have that available here every time we work in, say, with the same colorist, or we're working with the same production companies or people that you know that you're going to have these same exports every single time. Okay, so let's look at how we can do that. Here, okay, we can see that as we explore all of our presets, once again, if you come to the beginning, you have your custom export, right? By the way, up here, you can see that you have this shrink. All right, so if you want to show more of the timeline, you can do that, or you can extend it in case you want to see the full view of this panel as well. All right, so very easily. Now, over here, you can see that obviously we have our file name and our location, as we discussed. And underneath now you have the render type, if you want to render as a single clip or as an individual clip. So now in this case, say we are going to send this to these are dailies, okay? So we're working on dailies, so we're going to send them back to the editor. So how do we go about that? Well, in that case, you wouldn't want this as a single clip, but as individual clips, okay? Because you would want to send all the different clips, all the different dailies to your editor. So you're gonna go here on individual clips, as you can see, all right? And underneath on export video, you can see that you have a few different options that you can change. So in this case, we are going to change our format here, all right? And we are going to go into the MFX OP Atom, all right, pretending that the editor is working on something like Avid, okay? And then we are going to change this to from DNX HR over here to DNX HD. And then you can see that we have the type here as well that we could change. And we can go for something a little bit different. So something like 145, 120, 115, 8-bit, okay? That should do it for us. Perfect. So now that we've done that, we can change now. You can see that we have all these three different panels, okay, that we could choose from. So far, we're on the video. Then we would have our audio. Now, we haven't gone through audio in this lesson, obviously, because this is about color grading. But then this is something that would be synced, okay, before doing your dailies, right? Syncing the audio that was recorded on external recorder, and then that would be synced with the clips, okay? And so we're not going to touch upon this, all right? And then over here, you also have file, as you can see. And here on files, you can also change up a few things. Now, file name uses as, if you're doing dailies, it's obviously advisable to use the source names, okay? So you can work between online and offline, all right? So that is the advised way to work, and that makes things easy in the post-production workflow as a whole. Now, in this case, since we did chop it off using the scene cut detection from one single clip, all right, we would have a problem if we did source name, okay? Because all the clips would overlap over each other if we did source, because they all come from the same clip. So in this case, we're going to keep it to custom name over here. And obviously you can give it a name here. So we could say something like workday over here, workday dailies, okay? Something like that. All right, so this is going to be our workday dailies, just like that. And then here we can also say use unique file names, okay? Because we want to separate them. We don't want to create that overlapping and things that everything becomes a mess, all right? So we're going to say using unique file names over here and add a unique file name as, instead of prefix, we're going to say suffix here over just like that. And then you can also create, file subfolders, etc. Okay, so these are the options that you can change. But what's important is that if you're working with dailies, it's essential for you to change this to individual clips. You don't want to mistakenly go and then select single clip and send it all as a single clip, which would be a huge mistake. Okay, so now with that done, you can see that everything is set up for us, okay? And what we could do, obviously, we have our file names that we just renamed here to Workday Dailies, and then we have our location that we could choose. In this case, I'm going to keep it here, movies. Obviously, you then send it to the location that you want by browsing and choosing whether that's an external hard drive, whatever you're using, okay? So now the final thing you'd want to do, okay, is obviously send this to add to render queue. But how do we save this as a preset? Say we know that this is what we are working on every time, okay? So you don't want to go and change up things every single time you start a new project. You want to save it as a preset, and then when you know you're working on those dailies, you have that ready, okay? So you can just click your preset and then start and add it to your render queue. So what we're going to do, we're going to come to these three dots, okay? As you can see by now, these have a lot of options that can really benefit you. So it's always good, every time you see a panel, these three dots, just click and explore what it has to offer, okay? So now you can see that we can save this as a new preset over here. Okay, and now I can go and save as a new preset. You can also give it a name. So in this case, we can call this as dailies, all right? And then we can say dailies for PC, do something like that. Then you click OK, and you can see that now we have it just over here, okay, on our left. And now every time, all right, you can just click that and you have all your dailies ready for you. So now the next thing we're going to do is also make sure that here on the render is on entire timeline, because we want the entire timeline. Alternatively, you can always, if you're very specific with your timeline and you have a very specific in and out range, you can select that. Over here, we're going to keep it to entire timeline, and then we're going to say add to render queue. Okay, and now it adds it here to the render queue. And what we could do, once again, this is job 2. We can click over here and then rename it to what we want. So in this case, these are going to be our dailies. Okay, and then click away, and then you can see that now we have our first YouTube preset that we selected earlier, and now we have our dailies that we just created a preset. And now every time we want to go back and do more dailies, all right, on a day-by-day basis, you have that dailies for PC already for you there. So you can just click and then add to render queue, boom, done. And then you can render them all. So it's just as easy as that. Let's move on to next topic, which is how do we configure a timeline for digital cinema, okay? So now we're going to talk about DCP. For those of you that are not familiar with the term, this is a digital cinema package, okay? Which is basically the collection of media and metadata files that are used for digital cinema projection, okay? So you're taking your digital movie that you shot, say, on your Alexa or Blackmagic or whatever camera you're using, and now you create a DCP, okay? Because obviously these are digital cameras, and then you are going to export it for theatrical release, okay? So now the most important thing here to understand is that when creating a DCP, okay, the timeline must be set in one of these 3 resolutions if you're working in 2K, 2K native, 2K flat, and 2K CinemaScope. And then in 4K, you have the same option, which is 4K native, 4K flat, and 4K CinemaScope. So now let's look at the options that we have available for us. So if I click here on the timeline, you can see that we have our master settings over here. And now our current resolution over here is to 1920 by 1080, okay, standard HD, as you can see over here. So now let's look at the 2K options that we have available to us. So now if we do start with 2K native, all right, you can see it's over here. All right, 2K native is 2048 by 1080p, all right, DCI. All right, so this is with an aspect ratio of 1.9 to 1, as you can see. Then you have your 2K flat, as you could see it, it's also over here, which is 1998 by 1080 DCI flat, as you can see over here, with an aspect ratio of 1.85 to 1. You can see it over here, 1.85. And then finally, you have the CinemaScope, which most of you probably are very familiar with, and you can see it here as well, 2048 by 858 DCI scope. Okay, so this is CinemaScope with an aspect ratio of 239 to 1. All right, so that is for the 2K. You also can go in 4K, all right? So in 4K, the same applies, same exact thing, all right? You can have your 4096 by 2160, okay? Which is right over here. As you can see, this is 4096 by 2160 DCI, all right? Aspect ratio 1.9 to 1. And then you have your 2K flat, or as you can see over here, 3996 by 2160 DCI flat, aspect ratio of 1.85. And finally, you have your CinemaScope over here, which is 4096 by 1716 DCI scope, with aspect ratio of 2.39 to 1. Okay, so these are some of the aspect ratios. Okay, so now remember, you can choose only one between the 2K resolutions or the 4K resolution to create a DCP. All right, so now for this lesson specifically, all right, we are going to use a 2K. We're going to go for a 2K flat because that is the closest approximation to what we're using over here, which is the full HD. Okay, so in this case, we are going to choose our 2K flat, as we said, which is right over here with an aspect ratio of 1.85 to 1. Okay, so clicking that now, you can see that we can set it just like that. And all you have to do once you've selected it, just go here and say save. Okay, and once you save it, now our timeline is correctly, okay, set to our 2K DCI, right? 1.85 to 1 aspect ratio. Perfect. Now, something very important to understand over here is that 4K DCPs, all right, use a lower bit rate compared to the 2K DCPs when they're played on a 2K projector, okay? So if you know that your target projector is in 2K, always make a 2K DCP. Perfect. So now, with that said, what we're going to do, now that we've set all of that, we are going now to work on our DCP, okay, and render it. Now, how do we render a DCP, okay? So the first thing we're going to do here in our custom export, as you can see over here, we are going, first of all, we are going to render this instead of individual clips, because remember, we're not doing dailies anymore. Right now, we are doing a DCP, okay? So we are basically exporting a movie. So in this case, we're going to change this from individual clips to single clip, just like that. And secondly, the next thing we're going to do here, we're going to change the format, okay? So now the format, obviously, this is going to be a DCP, just as we discussed, and you can see that we have it right over here. Okay, perfect. With that done, now you can see here under codec, you have two different options. We have Easy DCP over here, and we have the Kodaku JPEG 2000. So in this case, we're going to use this one. And then over here, we can select, as we just discussed earlier, we have three 2K options, which is 2K DCI, 2K DCI flat, 2K DCI scope, 4K DCI, 4K DCI flat, 4K DCI scope. Now, if you don't remember, you run through an issue before you choose your type, remember, you can always go back and check what you have. So now you know that this is DCI flat, okay? It is in 2K. So now you can go back and make the right adjustment right over here, and you can see it's 2K DCI flat. That's how you know that it's the correct type, as you can see over here. Now, something very important also to understand here about the codec, okay? Now we're using the Kodaku JPEG 2000, okay? Here in Resolve, you only have two options. The Kodaku needs no license, and it can deliver encrypted digital cinema packages. Now, the Easy DCP, which is right over here, this encrypts digital media, but does require the purchase of a license, okay? So there is also a difference right there. So obviously we have this available, so we're gonna use the Kodaku JPEG 2000 right over here, and that should set it for us, okay? Now, also something to be aware is that when you are creating a DCP, the DCP uses the XYZ color space. This conversion of this color space to XYZ, all right, is performed automatically under the hood inside of Resolve when it's creating these DCP files. So now, also you can see under here you have an HDR and this use interop packaging. So now, what is the use interop packaging? Now, if we do check this one, this checkbox over here, this basically is going to generate the DCP based on these older but very supported interop standards compared to the new SMPTE standard. So now, what is the difference between the two? Now, the difference is the SMPTE standard is that supports a wider range of frame rates, okay? So now the interop standard, on the other hand, doesn't support as many frame rates, only 24 and 48 frames per second. However, is widely, universally more recognized. So this is one of the advantages. Now, since we do have our project in 24 frames per second, we're going to keep it here to use interop packaging, okay? Just that we keep it easy like that. So now, another thing we're going to talk about here is to naming and outputting a DCP. Now, for each version of the movie you create, all right, say if you're doing English, if you're doing a French version, a Spanish version, stereo version, all right, you are basically going to create a CPL, okay, which is a composition list. Now, DaVinci Resolve has a feature for you to create those CPLs, and you can do that just by going here on the composition settings, as you can see. And you can see that we have all of these options over here. But if you go here on edit, this should open a new page. Just as you can see over here, then we can rename it. So here we can say the, okay, long workday. All right, and then here we're going to keep it to ADV, all right, as you can see, which obviously stands for advertisement. And over here, the audio language, we're going to change this to English, okay? So you can scroll down and you can see that we have a few different options over here. We're going to keep it here on English, just as you see right there. So over here on the file name, something very important, do not use underscores, just use the capital for each, or don't use spaces, okay? So the way it's written here, right, that should work for your name filing convention. Perfect. So now with that done, we can just click now, okay. Remember something important now, the composition name is not to be confused with the package name, right, that contains the entire DCP. The package name is managed here, right, under our file name. That is where we can add our name, not there. That is something that to be aware of. Now, the next thing we're going to do here into our file, as you can see, we are going to now, here on the custom name, we are going to rename this to long workday DCP test. Just do something like that, okay? And then you can also browse where you want to put the movie. All right, so in this case, if it's a hard drive or whatever the location you want to send it to. And the next thing we're going to do here, we're going to go back to our render. We're going to make sure that it's set to entire timeline. Alternatively, obviously, if you want an in and out range, it's up to you, but I'm pretty sure you're going to use the entire timeline. And then what we're going to do next, we're going to say here, add to render queue. And now it's going to give us this checkbox over here. Okay, you can see invalid audio track count. Now, this is happening, okay, because this is due that DCP is basically anticipating that we'll have a 5.1 audio mix, which is very common, all right, when you are creating a DCP. Now, this project is in a stereo output, and even if we say here add anyway, that shouldn't be a problem because this could play in most projection systems. So we're going to say here add anyway, and you can see that now we have added, okay, our DCP package over here. And what we can do now is to click over here on job 3 and rename this to DCP, just like that. And now you can see that here it gives us the job DCP. So the next thing we're going to do now is to look at the advanced render settings over here. First of all, we're going to change our timeline, all right? We're going to change this back to the 1920 by 1080, okay, HD, okay, standard over here. Now that we've done that, we are back into our 1080p resolution. Scroll through these clips and we're going to go into this Vimeo, okay, 1080p, you can see over here. And now we are into our Vimeo preset. What you can do now is to go into your custom export. And now if we go back to our video, you can see that has taken some of the properties from the Vimeo. Okay, so all of those Vimeo properties are taken over here, but now we have the custom export, so we can make much more detailed adjustments, whatever we need to do. Okay, so that is very, very important. So now the first thing we're going to do over here, we're going to check that this is in QuickTime, which it is, our format, and the codec is in H.264. Then you can see that we also have the option here, use hardware acceleration if available. Okay, and over here, the resolution you can see is 1920 by 1080, frame rate 24 frames per second. So we are going to leave it the way it is, and we're going to keep scrolling down over here. And now we can see that we have this quality parameter here, as you can see. Okay, so now this quality parameter specifically, this refers to the data rate of the digital data. So this is the data per second, okay, required to transmit, all right, the video stream. Now a higher data rate, obviously this contains much more information, which results in obviously a better quality. Whereas if you use a lower data, then you're going to basically discard some data, but you're going to have much smaller sizes. So now this really depends how you want to operate. But the thing we're going to do over here is that we're going to restrict this a little bit. All right, so we're going to take this down to about 75, okay, something like that. Okay, so by doing this, now we're reducing the data rate of the file, okay, and we're significantly now lowering the file size, and we are still getting a pretty good quality. Underneath it, then over here, you have the encoding profile, as you can see over here. Now, the encoding profile determines the level of complexity involved with encoding the H.264, H.265 files, okay? And you can see that over here, we do have a few different options, all right? We have the auto, we have the base, we have the main, and we have the high. So the way this works, okay, they're listed from the lowest, okay, which is our base, as you can see over here, and then to the highest being over here, high, which is a 444, okay, with basically the auto determining an optimal profile, okay, based on our timeline media. So that's basically what we have over here. So in this case, we're going to leave it to auto, okay, because this is pretty good for this render job that we're doing right here. So underneath over here, you have these keyframes, and for the most part, automatic really works. But if you do have very fast moving imagery and see that you have glitches or artifacting happening in your render video, then we can increase here the keyframes, okay, frequency. So that is something we could do. So now over here, what we can do is I am going to change this to every, or over here, instead of doing the auto actually, and we're going to lower this to about 24 frames, okay? This basically ensures less distortion during temporal compression, okay? And playback of this video that we're going to export right now. And underneath over here, you have the frame reordering. This basically allows for the encoding of B frames, okay, to improve the quality of the rendered video, in this case of this video right here. And this can be disabled if you want faster encoding, but this would definitely take down the visual quality. So we're gonna keep that checked on. Over here, you can see that you also have this entropy mode. So this is if you want to further configure how the video is compressed, but by default, this is looking pretty good, so you don't really need to make any real changes over there. Then we're going to go here to advanced settings right underneath it, and now you can see that we have all of our advanced settings over here. Now, the first one you can see over here is the pixel aspect ratio. Pretty self-explanatory. This allows you to indicate if you do want the square or if you want the rectangular, okay, CinemaScope pixels. Now, this basically was more useful on the older workflows, okay, where you had cameras recording in analog for television, all right, where it was like a 1:3:3:1 aspect ratio, and then was converted, okay, for computers displays, which had the 1:1 aspect ratio. Now, if your video, though, does look weird and smushed and horizontally distorted, everything looks weird, then what you could do is technically change the pixel aspect ratio. But now, since we do have all the files here digitally, okay, recorded and encoded media, everything that we're working with, we can leave it the way it is. Now, underneath over here, you can see that we have the data levels. Now, this is something very important. They basically specify the data range of the image, okay, that we're working with. Now, you can see that by default, we have auto, video, and full. So now, something very important is that if you do find that your final video, okay, looks much darker or brighter, okay, for some reason, it looks not right. However, in the color page, everything looked fine. And then you export it, it looks really bad, and you just can't figure out what it is. Well, one of the problems could be that the data levels are incorrectly assigned. Okay, so that could be a problem. And that can happen based on offline media or some errors from transcoding or just different codecs. So to fix this, what you could do is then play a bit with the data levels, okay? So you can test exports. So maybe you can test video, you can test full, and you can see then now if the levels are working better, okay? So that's something you can do. But it's something important because this has happened to me in the past actually where, you know, by doing this adjustment alongside another one I'm going to show you in just a second, the file or the clips that you're working in the color page look one way and then the export looks completely different, much darker or much brighter, okay? So data levels could be one of the fixes for that. Underneath over here, you can see that you have the color space tag and the color gamma. Very, very important. These tags allow you to fix problems in which can occur and has occurred to me a lot of times where in DaVinci Resolve, okay, things look great and the colors are right, and then you export your clip, right? And you look at, say, something like QuickTime, and nothing is looking the way it was, all right? It's just darker. For me, it's been much darker most of the time. And for the longest time, I couldn't figure out why. Until I got on forums, and then this book by Daria also helps a lot, thanks to her for her input. But basically what you have to do here is to change your gamma tag. So if you're working on a Mac display, okay, and all right, you can change this, and say you're going to look at it in QuickTime or even in, you know, any other browser, right? So you want to change this now to Rec 709A, okay? I don't know if this stands for Apple. I believe it does, all right? This basically will map the rendered video over here, all right, to the Apple's internal Rec 709 curve, okay, when viewed on applications such as QuickTime. However, this is also very good because then it bypasses, okay, the tags when displayed on other players, right, or browsers online. So say you're looking at something else other than QuickTime, still this would be good and you'll be safe that way, okay? So that is something to really be mindful of, all right? Now, underneath over here, you have the data burn in, all right? So we're going to keep it to none because we are not going to add any data burn in to our clips, okay? And then underneath here, you have all these different options over here. You have this bypass, re-encode when possible, okay? So that basically means that you are going to render a direct copy of the original media when possible. Now, this is basically not very useful for most of the cases, but say you are working on a ProRes 422 media with the intention of then delivering in ProRes 422, then you can bypass this and basically this would render, okay, that same original media when possible. Then you can see that we have few other options over here. You have this use optimized media, use proxy media, and use render cached images. All right, so now what these allow you to employ all the generated cache or all the different renders in the footage, okay, in your export. So this is very useful then if you're doing very high quality proxy media or render caches, just like we did in this tutorial, okay? We're using very high quality such as 444 or HDR. Okay, so now this current project, if you remember, we did use a high quality, okay, format and with the 12-bit depth codec. So it does make sense for us then to say here, use render cached images, okay? Because we have such high quality ones that it's okay to integrate them into our workflow. Then underneath you have force sizing to highest quality and force debayer to highest quality. These are also very useful. Now in this case, we're going to select this force sizing to highest quality So we make sure that we have the optimal resize filter, okay, during rendering. Okay, and now for the force debayer to highest quality. Now remember that this is the different project. We didn't have any raw media here because these are all these clips, none of them are raw media. So we're gonna keep it the way it is. Okay, so we're not gonna check that. And then underneath you have this enable flat pass over here. This is very, very, very important if you do work with VFX. Okay, so VFX or compositors. And now enable flat pass over here, you can see that we have three options. We have off, with clip settings, and then we have always on. Now, when I do, okay, work with VFX artists or compositors, I always keep it on always on. Now, what is this? What is it telling you? So now, if you do come here on enable flat pass and you say always on, basically you are taking all the looks, all the grades out of your clips. And why is this important? Well, this is important because when you send it for VFX, you can't have any of your grading, okay, in your clips. It's the VFX artist needs to see a clean slate of all the clips that you have. So now you're not going to go in and individually now go and hide or work on every single clip and then hide the nodes. And that's just a lot of work. So enable flat pass, all right? Just keep it here on always on and you're not going to run into that issue. Now, if you have an off, obviously all the grades are intact. So if you do deliver to a VFX or a compositor with off, well, you're making yourself a disservice because you're going to have to re-render it again and, you know, and uncheck that or at least go on always on over here. Okay, so there's something to be aware. Obviously, you also have this other option here with clip settings, as you can see. This basically means we'll consider the bypass status of each version. Okay, so in this case, we're going to keep it actually with clips settings. Okay, just like that. And then over here, you also have this disable sizing and blanking output. I mean, that is very self-explanatory. Okay, this removes any transform changes and or blanking that you did apply, whether you were in the edit page or in the color page. Okay, so this we can just leave it like that, deselect it. All right, and then over here, we're going to move to our, we're going to change to our file tab over here, and you can see that now in the file tab here, we're going to change this. Okay, file name uses, we're going to say timeline name. Okay, so that's going to take the timeline name, which is the lesson 10 timelines over here. Thing we're going to do over here, I am actually going to press Command plus to make this a little bigger, and we're going to press here up and down. You can see we can move through our clips. Okay, alternatively, you can always click here. And now if we move to, this is our second, third, fourth, and fifth clip. Okay, and this is our sixth. Now we're going to move one. Okay, so we are right at the end of the fifth clip. So now you can see that here on render, we are entire timeline. Look what happens over here. Okay, if I do press the letter O. So now you can see that we have this render range, and that's affected also here on our render. Now it's not an entire timeline anymore because we pressed O. So we give it an exact order to say, hey, I just want you to just take this part, right? So now it's rendering in and out range, which we have just selected over here. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do here is we can add this now to our render queue, and then we're going to add it, and you can see that is added just like that. All right, so this is our job number 4, and over here we can rename this now to be our preview, and then we can say here a 1080p. Okay, so that's over there. Here you can see that this, I didn't see that job earlier, so this is going to be just our DCP. You can see that now we have, right, all of our different jobs that we added in our render queue. Okay, so another option over here is to also add show all projects, which will show you all the different projects. Okay, select all different projects, not just the one from this one. Okay, as long as they're in the same library, it will show you all of them. Okay, in the same database. Okay, so that's something very important. So now another thing you can also do is, can I delete or can I edit, right, all those different jobs once they're in the render queue? And the answer is yes, of course you can. So here in our DCP over here, if you go to the X over here, and you can see we have these available, this pencil and the X for every job that we have over here. So with our DCP or that we created earlier, we can just go on the X and then just delete it just like that. And you can see that that is gone now. And it's just as quick as that. I can also go here on my YouTube, select it, and then click on the pencil. You can see that that brings it back over here to our YouTube preset that we had earlier. And we can make all the adjustments that we need also over here. So for instance, we can change something like the resolution over here to something like 1920 by 1080 HD, okay? And we can even change the format. Instead, we can do QuickTime, okay? Something like that. And you can see how easy that is. And underneath, you also have the cancel option, which will cancel every adjustment we did and send it back. We have the update job, which would update it or add a new one, okay? So here we're going to say update job, okay? And you can see that now we have updated our job, okay? And it was just as easy as that. Now, everything here on the YouTube, or this one specifically that we selected, is now updated, okay? So that is just how easy you can make these adjustments very, very quickly. And then finally, what you could do is then you can also be very selective. So now if you do not select anything, you can see that now it's on render all. That basically is telling you that it's going to render all of them. If you do click on one clip, look what it says here, render one. But then what I can do is also command select the second one, render two. Okay, and then, or here, render all, because now we selected all of them. So you could see how nice that is. You can also do something like this, render just the first one and the third one, skip the second one for now. Or alternatively, if you want to render all of them, you're ready, you've done all your work, now you can say render all, and then the process will start and will be very, very quick. Now, something also very important, you can export. If you want to do quick export, you can do this as well through the edit page. Okay, so you can just come here, then go here on file, okay, as you can see, and then you have the quick export option. This is very useful if you're doing very quick preview, or if you're sending it to for just a YouTube or something like very, very quick and easy, right? Something that it's very, very nice and quick. So that is it, guys. That is it. This was lesson number 10 on delivering, okay? So a lot of these things obviously are very, very technical, but it's also very good to understand and know what you're doing in deliver page, because imagine you're putting so much work, okay? Here in the edit page, you're making sure that everything looks great, everything looks the way you intended it to be, it's looking awesome, and then you just don't understand the properties here in the delivery. Well, that is going to be a big miss for you, because then, you know, you're not optimizing to the full potential what you've done. So this is why it's very important to understand all the different settings and how to correctly output and deliver. This is basically based on Daria Fissoun book, okay, which obviously has been instrumental for all of these lessons. Please check it out, the Colorist Guide to DaVinci Resolve 18. And yeah, it's really awesome. That's something that you guys should definitely do. I highly suggest everyone to read this book because it's awesome. I think it's just, you get so much knowledge. Anyway, so thank you guys for watching. And now let me know if you guys want a brand new series of tutorials. I would be very, very happy to do so, or maybe do look recreations, or, you know, just anything really. Just let me know in the comments. But anyway, very, very thankful for all of you that supported this channel so far. And yes, I will see you in a future video. Thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next one.